We have lots to discuss in today's video, including the latest trade talk around the league. Of course, today we got more of the aftermath and behind-the-scenes details on what went down for the Mikko Rantanen trade, what led to it, will Carolina be able to keep him, and what moves may they even make later on into the offseason in order to make sure that happens. We'll discuss that. Plus, with Vancouver, there was a lot of speculation that if the Hurricanes didn't trade for Rantanen, that they were very close to trading for Elias Pettersson and the Canucks. So we'll discuss what's going on with him, who's the new front runner in that case. Plus, we also got word from the waiver wire today regarding Tony Deangelo. Lots of injury updates and a fairly substantial signing with the New York Rangers. And the Senators today had their quarter-century team announced. A lot more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to discuss here today. Let's start first with an update from the NHL waiver wire. We found out yesterday that the New York Islanders were signing veteran defenseman Tony Deangelo, who has returned from a brief stint playing over in Russia in the KHL. Because he played in that league this year, he does require waivers, so he was placed on waivers yesterday. We found out this afternoon that he in fact did clear, so he's officially a New York Islander and was able to suit up wearing number 4 for the Islanders in their game tonight. So he's officially on the roster and playing now with the Islanders after going through that process. Some other injury and roster move updates around the NHL. Buffalo today activated Ryan McLeod, so he's back in action. Unfortunately, the Sabres did drop their game again this afternoon. The Ottawa Senators, a banged-up group, pulled off a big 2-1 victory over the Maple Leafs tonight, even though the Leaf fans and once again invaded the CTC. The Sens pulled off a 2-1 win, which was massive to keep them in the playoff race. They were without Nick Jensen, who's out. He's going to be out for probably a couple of games. Josh Norris continues to miss as well. He's likely not going to be back until after the weekend sometime. They're still, of course, without Linus Ullmark as well. Jake Sanderson and Travis Hamonic both returned today, which was a bit of help, but then they lost Nick Cousins early in the game in the first period. He had an ugly collision with Leaf player Quinlan, who's playing his first NHL game. I know with his parents in attendance. Of course, he's from Toronto, so it wasn't a far commute for his family to come watch his first NHL action. And it was a bit of a scary incident. To me, I don't think there was really anything, deliberate or dirty on either side. It was just a case of Cousins kind of on the back check, coming off the bench, and it's just an unfortunate collision. It was a kind of, you could look like not exactly a knee on knee, but leg on leg. Cousins went down, even did a bit of a flip after the collision, and was not looking too good getting off the ice. Travis Green after the game did say that he's going to be out for a while, is all they could kind of estimate right now. But it didn't look good at all. The youngster for the Leafs, though, unfortunately for him, was able to shake off the effects and continue playing. He didn't play a whole lot more, but I don't think that was really because of injury. I think that's just the Leafs shortening their bench in a tight game, trying to figure out a way to score to get the game tied or to get the win. The Sens definitely battling lots of adversity when it comes to injuries, and that continued to mount tonight with the loss of Cousins. So we'll have to wait for further evaluation on him probably the next day or two. Vancouver Canucks recalled Elias Pettersson. Yes, that's the other Pettersson. So I call him Elias Pettersson 2.0 now. I guess the one difference here, because I do have the game on here in the background, so I'm mute right now, but the Canucks are playing the Capitals, and you have Elias Pettersson and Elias Pettersson. So their first names, I guess, are slightly different. Apparently, because the rookie Pettersson's a defenseman, so at least they play different positions. Apparently, they call him DP. So, Defense Pettersson, I guess, is probably what that stands for. So, he's making his NHL debut this evening. The Maple Leafs today had to move Connor Dufour to IR. The Columbus Blue Jackets today announced a substantial setback in the case of Sean Monahan. He's going to be missing an additional 6 to 8 weeks, and then that's going to push his return with CBJ back probably until around middle March, probably the second or third week of March now, before Monahan comes back. That's definitely a big blow. It's going to be well after the trade deadline. If the Blue Jackets continue to play well like they have been, I'd be curious to see if their management team goes out and adds for this team to try to get a push into the playoffs. Getting Monahan back so late in the year will almost be like a trade deadline acquisition. He had been playing well before the injury as well, and that's going to keep him out of action for quite some time. The Montreal Canadiens today also recalled Raphael Harvey-Pinard as well. So that's all for roster updates and injuries and all that type of stuff. We also had another trade today. This one was a small trade involving prospects. The New York Rangers today traded 22-year-old forward Ryder Korczak to the Tampa Bay Lightning in exchange for forward prospect Lucas Edmonds. So a couple of AHL players getting swapped there, so nothing too substantial. We also got word today from the NHL. They announced the quarter-century team for the Ottawa Senators. So I've been waiting this one. I mean, I figured the first team especially would be pretty easy to predict. The top line in the forward group is the old pizza line. Of course, was recently honored by the Sens earlier this season, which encompasses Daniel Alfredsson, Jason Spezza, and Danny Heatley. Of course, on the back end, you've got Wade Redden and Erik Karlsson, and definitely the team's all-time winningest and greatest goaltender, Craig Anderson. Team 2, current captain, Brady Tkachuk, along with Mark Stone and Marian Hossa. I wondered if Timmy Stützle might make it into team number 2, but obviously Hossa is a heck of a player. Hard to argue with that selection, really. I just wondered where he didn't have a super long career in Ottawa, if Timmy might get the nod there, but definitely probably close. He's probably the only other player that was probably in that conversation. Chris Phillips and Zdeno Chara on the back end. I know a lot of people don't really remember Chara as much as being an Ottawa Senators. They do probably being a Boston Bruin, but he definitely had some really solid, effective years there. Of course, it came down. At the time, it was between Chara and Redden. We're both UFAs at the same time, and the team really couldn't afford to keep both of them, and they chose Redden over Chara. I think as much as Redden was a big part of the team and had a great run and career with Ottawa, I do wonder sometimes if they had regrets. At least probably took a while for the regrets to kick in. Looking at how much longer Chara played and how much longer his career was a dominant player, it could have made a big difference for them, especially later on when they were chasing, when they had a chance to be more consistently in the playoffs. So we'll see. Patrick Lalime is the second team goaltender besides Craig Anderson. Lalime is second in a lot of team goalie records, so no big surprise on that front. We also said a pretty substantial signing with the Rangers today. They recently acquired Will Borgen, who came from Seattle in the Capo Caco trade. He gets a pretty substantial extension. It's a 5-year contract at $4.1 million. Now, it's fair to say that Borgen has been a good fit there. Fair to say that they like what he brings. And obviously, since his arrival and since that trade, the Rangers have turned things around. They were a bit of a downward spiral. And we're losing left, right, and center. They've got themselves completely out of the playoff picture, but they've battled their way right back in. They're not in a spot as of today, but they're right in the mix within, I think, 1 or 2 points. I don't have the standings right in front of me, but I know between like Tampa, Columbus, Ottawa, Montreal, the Rangers, it gets so tight. All those teams within 1 or 2 points of each other. So they're right back in the mix here. So obviously he's been a part of that. It does seem like a lot of term and a lot of money, though, for when you think Will Borgen. It's a little surprising. So I do wonder what further, surgery, operations, whatever you want to call it, they will do to that roster, especially on the back end. We know Ryan Lindgren may not be returning. He's a pending unrestricted free agent. Be curious to see how they handle that situation as well. Especially, even if they are going to be, in the mix for playoffs. We still have a ways to go. The next few weeks are going to probably be big to see if we can get some separation in the standings or how long that log jam is going to kind of continue for. But, at the end of the day, Borgen's definitely earned the right to stay with the Rangers. They like it. They like what he brings. It does seem like a lot, but I guess time will tell on how that contract works out. Now, as I mentioned, today we learned a bunch of details too on the aftermath of the blockbuster trade that went down yesterday. Of course, Mikko Rantanen traded by the Avalanche to the Hurricanes. We heard comments from Jared Bednar and Nathan MacKinnon, and they seemed pretty upset by the fact that Rantanen was traded. I know, like, MacKinnon went on to say, he understands the business side of the game, but obviously very sad to lose a good friend, good teammate, and a heck of a player in Rantanen. Those two were a dynamic duo in many ways. He said, for anybody that knows him, that he really doesn't care that much about money. And, on the speculation that Rantanen his next contract and his contract demands might have put him making more than McKinnon. And like McKinnon said, he really doesn't care. That's really not a concern of his. He wants all the players, when they earn it, to be able to get paid. So they certainly seem disappointed and shocked, to say the least. But certainly, based on what we had heard from the details from Elliotte Friedman on Saturday Headlines tonight, basically says that the Avalanche were willing to make Mikko Rantanen the highest paid winger in the NHL. Currently, that distinction belongs to Rangers forward Artemi Panarin, $11.6 million. Now, if you look at the contracts that have been signed recently that are higher than that, and you look at like the Leon Draisaitl one, for example, Matthews, they're centers. Centers always get paid more. It's a different role. They have more responsibility. So a winger like Rantanen putting up, 100-point season or in that mixture, a few multiple times, certainly earned him the right to be one of the game's higher paid players, no doubt. But the Avalanche were not willing to make him, a $14 million player, because that's the rumored number that he's looking for. That since the Draisaitl extension was completed, that he and his agent have kind of set their sights on that, saying, okay, well, we want something close to comparable to Draisaitl. When many people don't see them as necessarily being comparable players, you have to wonder, though, if, could Rantanen move to the middle and with Carolina and play that role? We'll have to wait and see how they decide to utilize him. I know initially he's going to play on the wing with Sebastian Aho, who he's great friends with. So clearly that's kind of where the breakdown was. If he really is looking for $14 million or something close to that, and Elliotte said that they were willing to make him the highest paid winger, around 11.75, which is just a little bit more than Panarin. That's a massive gap in negotiations, and the Avalanche didn't feel like there was any chance that they were going to be able to close that gap, so they didn't want to waste an opportunity to lose them for nothing. According to what Carolina said, and Eric Tulsky, their GM, they've had discussions with the Avalanche off and on dating back to the offseason, and several scenarios have been discussed and presented back and forth over the last, even 6 weeks. So clearly, I know the comments from Rantanen kind of sound like he was shocked, surprised, upset, but, I don't think that's fair to say. I think that's just saying all the right things, trying to make sure Avalanche fans know that he really didn't want to go, and deep down maybe he didn't, but I think he had to understand the fact that he had no contract and the fact that where things stood with negotiations, that there was definitely a chance he was going to get traded, and that it could lead to that, and that obviously I'm sure all the things they've been told and heard in the last few months or so, it really shouldn't be that shocking at the end of the day. The Avalanche got some good pieces that they can work around. They also saved a little bit of salary cap space as well. Now, one thing we've heard when it comes to the Hurricanes, there's definitely a major push internally there to want to keep him. Elliotte said that they're real excited to have him. They view him as being the real first player, in that organization, dating all the way back to, like, say, Ron Francis, when he was putting up 100 points. That's how long it's been since he's had that type of star player. I mean, Sebastian Aho has been the biggest star in this team, and he's a great player, don't get me wrong, but Rantanen's totals have been a lot higher, and I think has just a little bit more higher level of respect for being a superstar around the NHL than anybody else on that roster right now. So they're certainly quite excited to have that type of star caliber player. Their cap situation is definitely going to be improving for next year, and they definitely would like to keep him. The belief is that they will try their hardest, and even if it means getting close to that $14 million range, they very well might open their wallets to get it done. Even if they have to move another player to make it happen. I've seen some reporters suggest that depending on how things go down their stretch run here and into the playoffs, that even if they had to move Svechnikov, if it meant keeping Rantanen, they might be willing to do that. So this Hurricanes team is definitely trying to win. They want to win the Stanley Cup. And depending on how that goes into the offseason, it could be fascinating to watch to see if they can keep Rantanen and if there is another cap casualty like a Svechnikov, for example. So we'll see. I mean, obviously there's lots of time left this year for them to negotiate, and we'll see what happens. So obviously the Avalanche have, people don't think the Avalanche are done. We talked yesterday about Crosby. So far today, that's been downplayed by pretty much every Pittsburgh reporter, even Elliotte on the Hockey Night. It was brought up by Ron McLean even. I had people give me a hard time in a video yesterday saying, oh, how you're bringing up all this BS about Crosby. It's like, well, to be honest, it's not BS. It was a legit thing brought up by, good people with good sources that are well connected, like Kevin Weeks. He mentioned it. Paul Bissonnette mentioned it. And then we have even Ron McLean talking about it on Hockey Night in Canada tonight. It's not like, it's a taboo topic. So I don't quite understand why it seems to irritate people so much. And if you listen to what I had to say in that video, I just said that these connected people were starting to lay out the, connect the dots, if you will, that maybe that could happen, even though I said, in my opinion, it's probably not going to happen. As much as it'd be really fun and interesting concept, I just don't see it. But, would I love to see it? I think it'd be great for the game to see Crosby go to a contender and get him back in the playoffs. I just don't know that he's going to want to do that. So that's just where things are at with that front. So now the Hurricanes, we also learned, were in very deep discussions with the Canucks, and they were talking about both Miller and Pettersson, but it sounds like their interest in Pettersson was way higher. I don't think the Miller talks really were all that far, which is what we had heard before, that when it comes to JT Miller, the belief is it's pretty much the Rangers or bust, that the Carolina Hurricanes were in there, but not really that much on Miller. It was mostly a focus on Pettersson. And if the Canucks were going to trade Pettersson, yesterday was a day it came super, super close. And the Hurricanes have been involved in those discussions with that team on this player multiple times, dating back to last year. Obviously, they chose the path to get Mikko Rantanen instead, so I would put them out on Pettersson. But yesterday, there was a chance that Pettersson was getting traded to Carolina for a similar package that we saw in the Rantanen deal. But they said the Hurricanes decided to go the route of Rantanen, but that's how close things were. So, there's definitely a possibility that Miller and Pettersson could both be traded right now. With Miller, it seems like there's fewer teams interested right now. But if one team that Friedman brought up on Hockey Night tonight on the Saturday Headline segment, now that the Hurricanes are, made their move and they're definitely out on Pettersson, he says the Buffalo Sabres might be the front-running team if a Pettersson trade's going to happen. We know they've got a very, interesting group there between some players that have, they're younger players with a good amount of experience and some prospects and young players that are, still dipping their toe in the NHL here. Could you see a package being offered to the Canucks that could include either like a Dylan Cousins, maybe an Owen Power, or because if you look at their blue line, I think they would give up one of their D, probably not Dahlin, but whether it be Byram or Power and Cousins, like some kind of package around that would be my thinking of what the offer would be. At least it would have to be. There would have to be more than that, but that's kind of pieces that you would see. So to me, Pettersson to Buffalo might be a scenario that we actually watch for. And, I guess the thing that Vancouver media is saying is if they really are willing to entertain trading Pettersson and Miller, if they do end up doing that, you might as well tear down the rest of the core. You might as well kiss Besser goodbye. You might as well consider moving Demko. What about Quinn Hughes? What's he going to think about all this stuff? You're not going to go out and try to trade him right away, but, certainly it could create a scenario where all of a sudden the team becomes into rebuild mode. So that's why I'm so surprised that that level of serious discussions have been going on around Pettersson. You would think they would try to move Miller and call it a day, and if they're unable to, then they have to keep working at things internally to see if they can't overcome this. But at the same time, you can tell by the way the team is playing, the way both players are playing, that something has to give here. So it's going to be interesting to say the least. But, could Pettersson go and Miller both? Pettersson to Buffalo, is that something we have to keep our eyes out for? And will Carolina end up moving a player like Svechnikov, not now, but into the offseason, if it means keeping Mikko Rantanen? So we'll have to follow this scenario along closely. Certainly, we know that the Carolina Hurricanes are a very creative team. We've seen a creative contract with Seth Jarvis. They're definitely in go-for-it mode. And I wonder what else they might try to fit in here to be able to make a run. So are they the new favorites now in the Eastern Conference? Let me know what you think down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.